Over 60? Discover the shocking shower habit that's secretly aging you. Transform your skin today. Margaret squinted at the screen, her heart pounding much too fast for the tranquility of her suburban home. The clickbait title felt like a personal vendetta against every wrinkle on her face. Her reflection in the computer screen was daunting. Sagging eyelids, age spots, and a tired expression that fought to hide the years spent shaping minds and nurturing souls. Am I really that aged? She thought, sinking deeper into the plush couch, memories of laughter and chalk dust. Each creak of the floorboards felt like a reminder of her invisibility among her granddaughter's Instagram stories, soaking in praise for their flawless, filtered youth. In the quiet streets of Elmwood, Margaret's days spun into a repetitive cycle, sipping coffee while knitting sweaters for her granddaughters who, unbeknownst to them, had traded heartfelt conversations for quick video chats and likes. She felt lost in translation, unable to engage in their worlds, their whispers a constant backdrop to her insecurities. How did she become the subject of ridicule? Aging is beautiful, she told herself sometimes, but the giggles that erupted over family dinners when the conversation turned to her skincare routine gnawed at her heart. Maybe I should just retreat, she pondered, imagining herself disappearing into the depths of old photos, her sharp mind and warm hugs reduced to mere memories. The visit to the dermatologist had cut deeper than any knife. After the doctor had handed her a pamphlet on skin rejuvenation, it stung like she had been exposed on social media. Raw, vulnerable, every flaw magnified. Your routine is outdated, he said, shaking his head. She had wanted to run, the weight of years hanging like loose skin on her bones. Margaret's gaze drifted to her hands, once tools of creativity and learning, now trembling with age spots that told every story of laughter and love. A seismic shift churned inside her, desperate to be seen, not for her wrinkles, but for the person she was. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Margaret's newfound determination fizzled under the twin pressures of societal beauty standards and her daughter's doubtful glances. How could a homemade beauty ointment possibly work? They grumbled, dismissing her half-hearted attempts to reclaim her self-love. Yet as she sifted through family photo albums, fingers grazing memories, she found a faded recipe for her mother's skincare ointment penned in delicate handwriting, a tangible bridge to her past. This small spark ignited hope, intertwining her identity with her family's legacy. An idea blossomed. She would embrace this journey. But with each step into the unknown realm of organic skincare, nagging doubts clouded her vision. What if she failed? What if her efforts could never compete with the glimmer of her grandchildren's highly curated lives? Would they ever understand her transformation wasn't just skin deep, but a fight for acceptance, a rediscovery of herself amidst clinging shadows? The tension in her heart grew thicker, and as she prepared for her first skincare workshop, anticipation coursed through her veins. Was this the turning point, or another bitter reminder of family alienation? A whirlwind of self-doubt and determination swirled, and the answers waited just beyond the horizon, shrouded in uncertainty. Margaret carefully arranged the ingredients on her kitchen counter, each bottle and jar tinged with memories of her childhood. The quaint kitchen, once bustling with the warmth of family, took on a sterile ambiance as she focused on the task ahead. She read the instructions again, her heart racing. This workshop wasn't just about beauty. It was a chance to reclaim her identity, but the gnawing fear of failure echoed louder than her hope. As she combined essential oils and natural extracts, each stir of the mixture felt like an act of defiance against the scornful laughter of her daughters. They may have looked at her with skepticism, but she clung to the faint whisper of belief that this could truly work. The realization that she was about to create something meaningful grounded her. This endeavor wouldn't just be a homemade beauty routine, but a connection to her roots, an inheritance of wisdom that transcended time. The night before the workshop, Margaret's sleep was fitful. Each chime of the clock reminded her of the ticking away of youth and vitality. She envisioned herself standing in front of the group, a blend of excitement and dread swirling within her. What if they laughed? What if they saw her as just another old woman stuck in the past? Self-doubt gnawed at her, wrapping around her like a tightening coil. The sting of critical comments lingered like an unwelcome guest at the family table. Perhaps the fear of inadequacy was a more powerful adversary than aging itself. Yet, in the quiet moments alone, an ember of resolve grew. Margaret dug deep into herself, beyond the insecurities and societal judgments. "I am more than my age," she asserted quietly to the stillness of her kitchen. She recalled the moments when her students' eyes lit up while discussing literature, the joy of sharing knowledge. It was this very passion that had made her feel alive. The day of the workshop arrived, bringing with it a strange concoction of excitement and petrification. As her guests began to arrive, she busied herself with final preparations, muscles tight with nerves. Each face that entered her home seemed to scrutinize her, but she forced herself to focus on the vision she held, an intimate gathering to share the legacy of natural skincare. "Welcome, everyone," she said, trying to project a confidence she didn't entirely feel. A few familiar faces from the neighborhood smiled back, some younger participants with curious expressions that pushed her to keep speaking. As she began the demonstration, a quiet narrative unfolded, the importance of tradition, self-care, and the beauty of aging gracefully. She could feel herself loosening, the tension of self-doubt ebbing away. Yet, as she mixed the final blend before their eyes, disastrous thoughts threatened to creep back in. What if they found it ineffective? What if their critiques stung deeper, shattering the fragile shell she'd built around her newfound purpose? Suddenly, she felt the powerful lurch of that familiar sensation in her stomach, those waves of uncertainty crashing against the shores of her confidence. But there was no turning back now. Margaret took a deep breath, drew on her years of experience in the classroom, and invited her guests to join her in the process. As they picked up their mixing bowls, their laughter filled the air, transforming her doubts into a symphony of shared excitement. With each application, Margaret realized she was no longer just facilitating a workshop. She was embarking on a journey towards her own rebirth. She glanced at the women gathered around her, connected not just by their desire for radiant skin, but through an underlying yearning for acceptance and understanding. But even as the workshop blossomed, deep questions loomed like storm clouds. Had she truly stepped beyond mere appearances, or would she remain tethered to the fading perceptions of beauty? As she watched their faces, laden with anticipation, she sensed that the real transformation was just beginning. The moment had arrived to confront the ghosts of her past, and as laughter erupted around her, a new doubt emerged. Could this be enough to rekindle the connection with her family? Margaret held her breath. The real challenge awaited her outside these walls, where acceptance hung in the balance. As the workshop drew to a close, Margaret gathered the remnants of her supplies, a mix of oils and unfinished creams strewn across the counter. The sound of chattering women faded into joyous echoes. With each smile exchanged, she felt lighter, the weight of her fears dissipating, only to be replaced with a rising tide of uncertainty about her family's reaction. Her daughter's skepticism had loomed large in her mind, casting a shadow over her newfound triumph. The reassurance from these women felt good. But would it mean anything to her girls, who might still dismiss her as a relic of the past? Margaret chided herself for letting doubt creep back in. This was her moment, yet the challenges on the path ahead loomed even larger. "Margaret, thank you! This was amazing!" one participant exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with newfound delight. "I can't wait to try this at home." That affirmation sparked a small flame of pride within Margaret, but it quickly flickered out when she thought of her daughters. I need to share this with them, she thought determinedly. They have to see the joy I found in this. That evening, as she sat in her living room, the familiar, soft hum of the television faded into the background. Her daughters were visiting, lounging on the couch, glancing at their phones, disinterested in her workshop details. Margaret grasped a few freshly made cream jars and took a deep breath. Ladies, I want to show you something. I hosted a workshop today, and I think— What, Mom? Like those DIY things you always do? Sarah interrupted, rolling her eyes. The hurt was palpable, but Margaret pressed on, her voice steady. Yes, but this time it felt different. It was about self-care, right? Sounds nice, but can you just put it somewhere else? We have plans, Emily said dismissively, half listening. The rejection stung like a sharp jab, escalating Margaret's internal tumult. This is what I've been working towards, she thought, feeling the gravity of her daughter's disinterest. What if they never understood? The question felt like an anchor, pulling her back into the depths of self-doubt. Margaret glanced at the jars, reflecting on the uncertain futures of their contents. Beauty blends meant to nurture, yet barely acknowledged in her hand. Determined, she took a step towards the kitchen, called for their attention, and placed a small jar on the table. Just try it, one application, for your skin, please. They shared skeptical glances. Fine, Sarah mumbled, but I doubt it's anything that could change our lives. The words hung like a sickening cloud, and Margaret fought to swallow her reaction. Was this just another failure, or could this moment be a pivot toward opening dialogue? As they reluctantly sampled the cream, Margaret felt her heart race, a blend of anticipation and hope flooding her veins. Seconds stretched into hours as she awaited their reactions, watching for signs of acceptance or disdain. Each moment became an internal examination of her journey, questioning whether she could still reshape her narrative. I'm not just an old woman, she thought fiercely. I have insights, experiences that matter. The realization began bubbling up. Perhaps the workshop wasn't solely about creating beauty products, but igniting connections that spanned beyond. The silence broke as Emily slowly nodded, a tentative smile creeping across her face. Not bad, she began, shooting Margaret a surprised glance, as if reassessing her mother's worth. The exchange ignited something within Margaret, but just as quickly, the old shadows of doubt resurfaced. Would they still see her as the same? Or would this lead to deeper conversations, ones where she could finally reclaim her identity? With as much conviction as she could muster, Margaret cut through the tension. Let's talk about it, all of this. I want to share not just my work, but a part of me that feels lost. And as she said it, Margaret realized her path had diverged from mere self-caring into something bolder, a journey towards reconnecting with her daughters. Yet, as their expressions shifted from surprise to contemplation, a new wave of uncertainty crashed over her. What if they didn't want to connect? The stakes had never been higher, and she sensed the pivotal moment ahead. Would she step firmly into her daughter's world, or retreat into the shadows of disconnection? The time had come to confront not only their perceptions, but also her own. This was merely the beginning of the most challenging workshop yet. Margaret's heart raced as she observed the subtle shift in her daughter's expressions. Hope flickered, battling the creeping dread that their newfound openness would quickly evaporate. Silence enveloped the living room, thick enough to catch her breath as she wrestled with the precarious balance of vulnerability and determination. Mom, are you serious? Sarah's voice cut through, a hint of disbelief lacing each word. This is just lotion. Why does it matter? Margaret swallowed hard. Because it's not just about the cream. It's about being present, about taking care of ourselves and connecting. I've been doing this for a reason. The fervor in her voice surprised even her, but she pressed on, unwilling to back down. None of your DIY crafts are trendy or cool, Mom, Emily chimed in, her tone sharp. "We're busy with our lives. Can't you see that?" The resistance felt like a punch to her gut. Did they truly believe she was stuck in the past? Was she that invisible to them? The walls of her confidence began to collapse. She felt as if she were on a precipice, teetering between confrontation and retreat. "They'd just never get it," a voice whispered inside her, but Margaret shook her head. She refused to let it prevail. "This isn't just crafts, this is part of me," she blurted, her voice rising. "This workshop wasn't an aimless pastime. I've poured my heart into it." An awkward pause hung in the air. It was a raw moment, and her daughters' astonished faces signaled urgency, a gap that begged to be bridged. "Mom, we just don't see the point. It feels outdated," Sarah finally admitted, her tone softening slightly. "You have to understand where we are." "And I understand where I've been," Margaret countered, her composure slowly returning, driven by the strength of her experiences. "I've been invisible, yes, but I'm not outdated. I'm evolving. I can help guide you in ways that matter." Emily exchanged glances with Sarah, uncertainty etched across both their features. The tiny crack in their skepticism was palpable, but fear still lingered, holding them back from fully diving into a conversation they had avoided for far too long. "What if we gave it a chance?" A small voice in the back of Margaret's head dared her to continue, to reveal what lay deeper. "What if you shared not just what you've made, but the journey behind it?" "I want to teach you," Margaret said, her heart pounding. "Not just about cream and oils, but about self-care, owning your experiences and recognizing the beauty in them, all of them." For a moment, their youthful energy seemed to waver as the impact of her words struck. Just beneath their skeptical surfaces lay a desire for understanding, for genuine connection, a glimmer of the companionship she had once cherished with them. "Just let me show you," Margaret said, her tone more gentle now, a plea rather than a challenge. "Maybe together we can find a way forward, a way to connect again." Before she could fully comprehend the weight of her invitation, a wave of fear washed over her. What if they turned her down? What if this tangible opportunity to reconnect slipped away, leaving her stranded once more in the isolation of doubt? As the moment stretched, she braced herself for their response and felt the emptiness of hesitation vibrating in the room. Could they see her potential, her worth, not defined by the past, but shaped by the moments they could still share? Then Emily leaned forward, her brow slightly furrowed. Maybe we could try it together." The words came out hesitant yet curious, planting a seed of excitement within Margaret's chest. With cautious optimism, Margaret nodded, feeling a new resolve harden inside her. This was their opportunity to rewrite the narrative, to build a new bond rooted in understanding and shared experiences. But as they grappled with this decision, uncertainty still clung to the air. What if behind this tentative step lay deeper issues they weren't prepared to face? Margaret's pulse quickened anew at the thought. The past had crafted her daughter's perspectives, but what truths would they uncover when confronted with the depths of her journey? As she prepared to guide them on this challenging path, uncertainty loomed larger than ever. Would the connection they craved be stronger than the old barriers still standing in the way? Margaret felt a tumultuous mix of dread and hope swirling within her as she carefully considered Emily's tentative suggestion. The air crackled with unspoken possibilities. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. This moment marked a shift, not just for her daughters, but for herself. Could they build the bridge that had been threatened by years of misunderstanding and distance? "Let's start with something small," she proposed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Why don't we take an afternoon to make our own moisturizer? It'll be easy, and I can show you how to personalize it." Her mind raced with ideas, essential oils, nourishing ingredients. They could blend their own versions. Sarah glanced at Emily, her skepticism mingling with intrigue. "Okay, but we'll need to make sure it fits into our schedule. Carting around jars of lotion isn't exactly top of the priority list." "Absolutely, we can make it simple. An hour here or there can transform how we connect," Margaret assured, trying to suppress her rising apprehension. This is more than just lotion. It's a foundation for something deeper. A flicker of determination sparked inside Margaret. She was determined to prove that her past experiences, those that had shaped her identity, could spark meaningful dialogue. If they were willing to experiment, perhaps they could resurface topics long buried beneath the surface of everyday life. Over the next week, she meticulously gathered supplies for their first joint venture. Each trip to the store felt loaded with potential. She chose lavender oil, soothing yet invigorating, alongside coconut oil, honey, and vitamin E. These were not just ingredients. They were symbols of care, of nurturing. They represented Margaret's journey towards reclaiming her role, not just as a mother, but as a woman who could inspire growth. The impending gathering felt monumental, charged with anticipation. Would this attempt to create something together break down walls that had felt insurmountable? Just a few days away from the workshop, she could feel the knot of anxiety loosening slightly, but uncertainty still lingered. Would sharing her craft evolve into more than mere trivialities? On the afternoon of their first session, the atmosphere felt electric, yet uncertain. Margaret prepared her workstation in the kitchen, arranging ingredients and tools with precision, as if preparing for a significant presentation. As she sparked the initiative, her mind churned with diverging fears. What if the process unraveled moments of pent-up emotion too powerful to handle? When Emily and Sarah arrived, their expressions mirrored her own blend of caution and curiosity. "So, how do we even start?" Emily asked, a hint of humor dancing in her tone, lightening the air ever so slightly. "Let's begin with the ingredients we've gathered," Margaret began, her voice imbued with a newfound authority. She offered a brief tutorial, the excitement in her voice echoing off the kitchen walls. Yet, as she delved deeper into the nuances of the self-care journey, questions she had avoided for too long resurfaced. It's not just about making something. It's about understanding how we connect to ourselves and to each other. Dialogue opened, tentatively at first, but soon bursting forth as they mixed oils and scents together. Margaret watched her daughters experiment, their eyes sparkling with newfound creativity. Bits of laughter punctuated the task, a stark contrast to the previously tense atmosphere. Yet, beneath this bubbly surface lay deeper currents of tension. The mention of caring for oneself revealed hidden fractures and insecurities that could not remain dormant forever. What would happen when the focus shifted from the creations to the underlying issues? As she guided them, a part of Margaret hoped they would dive deeper, willing to confront elements of their relationship. But what if they chose to skim the surface, leaving her once again with feelings of isolation? That concern wrapped around her like a thick fog. In that moment, she saw something spark in Sarah's eyes, an inkling of realization about the importance of self-care. Could this be the breakthrough moment she had envisioned? As the session drew to a close, Margaret felt buoyed by the subtle changes. They had created something beautiful together, but she understood that the real work had only just begun. The time had come to face not only her daughter's reservations, but her own fears of inadequacy, the haunting memories of being overlooked. Margaret's resolve solidified as she looked at their creations, jars brimming with fragrant possibilities. The next step loomed before her. How would they confront their feelings as she shared more of her journey? In revealing her vulnerabilities, would they see a different version of her? Determined, she decided the next session would not only focus on crafting, but also invite the unearthing of their deeper fears. Could they face the buried truths together, or would the shadows of their past continue to haunt them? The moment of revelation felt close, but so did the possibility of retreat. It was a delicate balance, and the stakes had never felt higher. Would their striving for connection bring them closer or leave them further apart? Margaret's heart resonated with urgency as she pondered what surprises awaited them in the coming chapters of their exploration. Margaret stood in the kitchen, scanning the array of products they had crafted over the past week. Each jar represented not just a combination of ingredients, but also the flickering hope of rebuilding their bond. The laughter shared over essential oils felt fleeting, yet it cracked open a door that had long been shut. As she prepared for their next session, anxiety twisted in her gut, a stark reminder of the emotional load that awaited them. The kitchen was set. Soft music played in the background, a calculated choice to create an inviting atmosphere. Margaret arranged the moisturizers on the table like small trophies, but the real prestige lay in the conversation she hoped would follow. She had decided on a different approach this time, one that would push the boundaries of superficial crafting and delve into discussions that felt too heavy to bear. When Emily and Sarah arrived, their smiles felt warm, yet accompanied by a palpable hesitance. Margaret took a breath, steadying herself. Today, we're going to talk about what self-care means to each of us. It can be as simple as finding time to relax, or as challenging as facing things we've hidden away. She gauged their reactions, watching the flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. "Isn't this just supposed to be about making lotions?" Emily asked, the tone mixed with sarcasm and genuine curiosity. Margaret recognized the need for reassurance, for some lightness in this endeavor. "It's a start," Margaret replied, her voice firm yet inviting. "But I believe it's important that we dig deeper than our jars of cream." Silence settled momentarily, and Margaret hitched her breath. She hoped they wouldn't retreat into the comfort of avoidance. Encouragement surged through her, pushing her to reveal her own vulnerabilities first. "You know," she began, eyes steady on her daughter's, "I've struggled with feeling inadequate for years, feeling like I'm not enough. Part of that journey was finding ways to care for myself, which I often neglected because I wasn't sure how." The admission hung heavy in the air. Emily's expression shifted slightly, eyes narrowing as if weighing her mother's honesty against her own experiences. Sarah's apprehensive glance indicated she was considering the unspoken burdens they all carried. Margaret pressed on, heart racing, knowing that she could either draw them in or send them spiraling away. "What if we share not just our routines but our stories?" she suggested quietly. "What does self-care look like when you're feeling overwhelmed?" Emily blinked, taken off guard, and then considered it. "For me, it's just managing school, and honestly, I just zone out with my phone. Not really nurturing, I guess." She hesitated. The confession fractured, revealing cracks in her facade. "Is that what you want, though?" Margaret encouraged gently. "What if you could figure out what your soul actually needs?" A flicker of something unnameable danced in Sarah's gaze, and Margaret sensed a shift. It had opened a window, and with careful thought and observation, she planned to blow it wide open in subsequent discussions. Self-care can't only be about wash-off beauty regimens. It's a way to confront and care for our emotional landscape. I want us to explore how we care for our mental and emotional health, too. As they began crafting yet another batch of moisturizer, this one imbued with intentions of healing, Margaret envisioned deeper connections forming. Their creative assembly turned into an exploration of their pasts, stories trickling through the cracks of their laughter, intermingling aromatic oils with personal revelations. The blend encapsulated more than craftsmanship. It embodied their ongoing struggle for connection, revealing fears and insecurities that reflected in the simplicity of the task before them. Yet, as they stirred and mixed, the fear of what lay ahead started clawing at her again. Would they retreat back into their old patterns? Would the weight of unresolved tension send them spiraling into silence? The pendulum swung precariously between vibrant connection and painful confrontation, and she could feel the pressure building. After they finished, Margaret made one last compelling push. "Next week, let's talk about something each of us has struggled with. We need to own our stories, no matter how uncomfortable. Will you be brave enough to share?" They exchanged hesitant glances, and Margaret braced herself for the possibility of retreat. Would they take the leap into deeper understanding, or would they slip back into their separate lives, leaving her once again left to ponder the shadows? The risk felt daunting, but Margaret resolved to champion authenticity, no matter the outcome. Would vulnerability forge an unbreakable bond, Or would it merely expose them to the sharp edges of their truths? With each moment passing, the stakes felt higher, and she knew the time for courageous conversation was drawing near. What conversations were waiting in the next chapter, and would they be ready to embrace them? Margaret felt the tension in the air like a coiled spring, each breath a gentle reminder of the possibilities that lay ahead. In the aftermath of their last encounter, she reflected on the power of vulnerability. It was an open door, inviting her daughters to step through to a realm filled with both uncertainty and opportunity. Yet, confidence mingled uneasily with trepidation as she prepared for their next gathering. At the appointed hour, she draped the kitchen in a fresh wave of lavender scent, a symbol of tranquility amidst the emotional turbulence. Margaret's heart raced. Today was about more than creams and masks. It was about peeling back layers, revealing the rawness of their experiences. When Emily and Sarah arrived, their shoulders bore an unmistakable heaviness, the unspoken topics weighing down the air like an anchor. "You both ready?" Margaret asked, her voice steady, though inside turmoil brewed. She caught Emily's eye and saw the collision of courage and apprehension dancing just beneath the surface. "I guess we should start," Emily said, barely masking her reluctance, yet the spark of willingness was there, the tremor in her voice a hopeful sign. Margaret took a deep breath and opened the session by sharing a memory from her own past. "A few years ago, I faced a setback at work that left me questioning my self-worth. I felt like I had to rebuild everything from scratch. It forced me to confront my fears and learn how to care for myself beyond just physical appearance." Silence enveloped the room, but it felt less suffocating than before. "I can relate to that," Sarah interjected, her voice barely above a whisper. "I always feel like my grades define me. When I struggle, I'm so hard on myself that I forget it's okay to not be perfect." Her confession opened the floodgates, and Margaret sensed the unearthing of deeper feelings. "It's not just grades, Sarah," Emily chimed in, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "I'm constantly scrolling, trying to fit into this ideal. But the truth is, I don't feel good inside." Margaret leaned in, her excitement tinged with caution. "How can we translate those moments of doubt into something healing today? Let's use our creativity here to explore." Emboldened by their exchanges, they shifted to crafting a new face mask, with each addition of ingredients becoming a metaphor for releasing burdens. "Let's add a pinch of vulnerability," Margaret suggested, her fingers deftly measuring out a scoop of honey. "We can nourish our skin while we nourish our souls." As they mixed, the concoction morphed into more than a beauty treatment. It was a tapestry of shared struggles, woven from Emily's academic pressures and Sarah's need for acceptance. Margaret found herself caught in a moment of intense introspection. Did she have the power to guide her daughters toward a realization that acceptance and love were rooted in embracing imperfections? The creation process became a dance of laughter, eye-rolling, and insights. Yet bubbles of anxiety continued to swell in her throat, wondering if by unearthing these emotions, they might fracture their fragile connection again. Margaret recalled her resolution to champion authenticity. Still, what if the risk to their bonds became too great? Just as the discussion seemed to reach a natural crescendo, Margaret asked, "If we were to confront our greatest fears today, what would they be? What holds us back from truly caring for ourselves?" The question hung heavily, swirling like the lavender scent around them. The deeper they delved, the more Margaret felt the tide of uncertainty. Would they grasp the opportunity to face their vulnerabilities, or would it be met with silence and retreat? Sarah shifted in her seat, her brow furrowed. I'm scared of not being seen for who I am." Emily echoed her sister's sentiment, nodding slowly. "Having to hide because I'm not perfect? That's what really scares me." Margaret's pulse quickened, realizing they were touching upon something monumental. They stood at the precipice of pivotal growth. Would she lead them in confronting these fears, or would they slip back into avoidance? This time, as she sought to guide her daughters through the labyrinth of vulnerability, She couldn't shake the feeling that the journey ahead required greater courage than ever before. Would they ultimately embrace their truths, or would the weight of their insecurities tether them to their pasts? With that thought lingering like a whisper in the air, Margaret prepared to step into unknown territory. The breakthrough was close, but success depended entirely on whether they were ready to confront their realities together. Would they take the plunge into authentic selves, or would fear snatch away their chance at connection? Margaret's heart thudded in her chest as she sensed the moment had come. The room was thick with potential energy, yet her mind raced with fear as she considered the possibility of pushing too hard, too fast. This new chapter required not only her guidance, but also their willingness to engage in a dialogue that was raw, unfiltered, and revealing. Every instinct told her that this was a pivotal point. "Okay," Margaret began, focusing her gaze between her daughters, her voice firm yet softening with vulnerability. "I want to create space here for us to air our fears. So let's speak freely. What does it mean for you to be seen?" Silence enveloped them again, but this time it felt charged. Emily clenched her fists, the tension rippling down her arms. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I'm judged? Margaret fought the impulse to soothe those fears with platitudes. Instead, she leaned closer, silently encouraging her. What if we view judgments as opportunities for understanding rather than reasons to hide? Emily looked up, her expression softening. I guess judging means they can't see the real me. If I don't fit their mold, will they even care? Precisely, Margaret responded, emboldened by the honesty woven into their conversation. But that's the irony. Hiding our imperfections only distances us from connections we truly crave. Sarah, visibly agitated, jumped in, her words spilling forth. I'd rather be invisible than feel exposed. Like, if people see me, my faults, they'll laugh at my inability to meet their expectations. The wall between her and the group felt daunting. Her vulnerability hovered just above the surface, trembling. Margaret noticed the look in Emily's eyes, anxiety mixed with empathy. We all have flaws, Sarah. Our insecurities are universal, and yet we've been conditioned to believe that showing them makes us weak. The air shifted slightly, and Margaret seized the moment. Would you be willing to share one fear with us? Something held close, but wanting to break free? After what felt like an eternity, Sarah swallowed hard. I fear I'll be defined by my mistakes. The confession hung there like a heavy fog, and for a moment, Margaret released her tightly held breath, recognizing the enormity of their shared understanding. As if a dam had burst, Emily leaned in. I don't just want to be liked for an image. I want people to appreciate who I am behind the photos. I'm scared I won't find that acceptance. Margaret marveled at the unmistakable transformation in the atmosphere. The three of them had simply begun to scratch the surface of their vulnerabilities, lifting the veil that had muffled their truths for far too long. But the journey still felt fraught with uncertainty. How could they commit to supporting each other through this uncovering when their fears loomed so large? Taking a calculated risk, Margaret pressed forward, her resolve growing stronger. Let's make a pact to embrace our fears rather than be defined by them. Starting now, let's view each exposure as a step toward authenticity rather than a threat. Both daughters looked at her, their expressions wavering between skepticism and hope. Would they grasp this opportunity for growth, or would they retreat back into silence, leaving their insecurities unresolved? A spark of determination ignited within Margaret. She could feel the energy shifting. It was a catalyst propelling them toward deeper connections. Yet she knew that confronting this reality would require resilience and nurturing from each of them. As the tension ebbed and flowed around them, Margaret realized she stood on a precipice, a chance not only for her daughters to grow, but for herself as well. The empowerment she sought to instill in them was already starting to awaken within her. But the next question brewed within her. What realization loomed just beyond this moment, waiting to be unearthed? The uncertainty lingered, igniting her curiosity to press on, to explore further into the heart of emotional vulnerability. Would they embrace the challenge and push through, or would the security of silence beckon them back? The quiet stretched further, punctuated only by the soft sound of their breaths, hanging in the air like a fragile thread. Margaret felt a shift, a tremor of possibility in the silence. Her heart urged her to maintain momentum. The vulnerability unveiled between them was a rare and precious commodity. But now she faced the risk of overstepping, of pushing them into territories they weren't ready to explore. "Let's try a small exercise," she suggested, her tone measured yet inviting. "Write down one fear you're willing to share, and let's talk about it. This isn't just about sharing, it's about understanding what those fears mean for us." Her daughters stared at her, hovering between reluctance and a flicker of hope. After a moment, Emily shifted in her chair and nodded, her fingers moving toward the stack of note cards Margaret had placed on the table earlier. Sarah followed suit, though her expression remained guarded, brimming with uncertainty. Margaret's own pulse quickened as she watched them begin to write. She bit her lip, aware that this was more than just an exercise. It was a tangible step toward confronting the complexities of their inner worlds. As the seconds ticked by, the stillness felt less daunting, transitioning into a space welcoming their anxieties. With a half-hearted chuckle, Emily broke the silence first. "Wow, writing it down makes it feel so real." Margaret smiled softly, her heart swelling at this small admission. "It does, doesn't it? But let's remember, putting it down is the first step toward freeing ourselves from the weight it carries." Sarah hesitated, biting her lower lip before she finally scribbled something down. Margaret observed her closely. There was a particular heaviness in her posture, a silent battle raging beneath her surface. "All right, who wants to go first?" Margaret prompted gently. Emily, her note card trembling slightly, raised her hand. "I can go. I'm scared. I'm scared that everyone sees me as just a pretty face, and that's it. I worry I'll never be anything more." The moment felt electric. Margaret watched as both her daughters visibly absorbed the words. Each member of the family felt the weight of that truth, connecting in a way they never had before. "That's powerful," Margaret acknowledged. "But you're so much more than that. Don't let one dimension define your worth." Sarah was next, her strength spilling over only after moments of silence. "I fear I'll never find a place where I belong, that wherever I go, I'll always be an outsider." Those words hung like a cloud over the room. Margaret's heart ached for Sarah. The raw honesty left little space for pretense. "Thank you for sharing that," Margaret said, her voice steady yet tender. "But tell me, in what ways can we start to create that sense of belonging together, as a family?" Both daughters exchanged stolen glances, their earlier hesitations now bubbling with possibility. Margaret sensed a tangible shift, a connecting thread weaving their shared vulnerabilities into a tapestry of understanding. In that moment, she reached for a deeper commitment. "Let's commit to sharing more, not just fears but dreams and desires too. We can build understanding on a much broader foundation." Emily's eyes shone with a combination of hope and fear. "What if exposing ourselves only gets us hurt more?" "It might. But sometimes growth lies on the other side of discomfort," Margaret replied, surprising herself with the clarity of her conviction. The ensuing silence felt charged and alive. They were all aware they were standing at a crossroads, contemplating a path that promised both difficulty and growth. Yet as the energy vibrated in the air around them, Margaret began to question her own fears. What situation had she avoided confronting for too long, bounding her own aspirations? The thought sent a ripple of trepidation down her spine. Would the journey ahead lead them to unearth buried truths, or would it reveal cracks they didn't know existed? Margaret knew she had to confront her realities, but the shadow of doubt lingered. The air thick with anticipation, Margaret braced herself for what awaited. Each revelation ventured into the unknown, echoing a seductive promise. What truths would surface next? Margaret sat in the kitchen, surveying the blinding light filtering through the window. The aftermath of their last session lingered like a palpable buzz of excitement and shared realizations. Emotions swirled within her, pride, hope, and the ever-looming anxiety of whether the budding connections they had forged would stand the test of time. Today, she vowed, would be transformative. With her heart racing, she prepared the space carefully. The ingredients were laid out deliberately, not just for another workshop, but for a conversation that could redefine their familial bond. Each jar was a symbol of their previous conversations, encapsulating individual vulnerabilities now charged with potential. "Welcome back," she greeted her daughters, who arrived with cautious smiles that reflected their tentative optimism. The room glowed with anticipation, a vivid contrast to their earlier reluctance. Today, we dive deeper. Let's explore our dreams, the aspirations that make us shine beyond just the skin. As they settled in, the weight of the previous discussions hung in the air. Margaret sensed the moment was ripe for unveiling new layers of themselves. Sarah, her brow furrowed, sat with her fingers anxiously fiddling with the edge of a note card. Do we really have to share dreams? It feels so vulnerable. The tremor in her voice revealed that old, familiar fear, yet beneath it lay a desire to connect. Sharing dreams can be just as powerful as sharing fears, Margaret encouraged, her own resolve hardening. It's a celebration of who we are, what we aspire to become. Finally, Sarah took a deep breath and spoke. I want to be an artist, but I'm scared that no one will take me seriously. I worry I might not even be good enough. Relief filled the room as she expressed her heart, the beauty of shared vulnerability washing over them. Emily, inspired by her sister's courage, chimed in, I want to be an environmental scientist. I want to make a difference, but it feels so overwhelming. What if I can't? Pride swelled in Margaret's chest as she realized they were shifting from pain to possibility. These aspirations are beautiful and meaningful. It's time we embrace these visions fully, without fear. Let's commit to supporting each other on this journey. Can we? Asked Emily, her eyes wide with skepticism but laced with hope. Absolutely, Margaret promised with conviction, heartened by their willingness to step forward. Let's create affirmations based not just on our fears, but on these dreams. Every time we write them down, let's also acknowledge the qualities within us that will help achieve them. As they dove into creating their affirmation jars, a transformation occurred. The air buzzed with creativity, excitement rippling through them as they expressed their aspirations and the strengths that would propel them toward those goals. Mine says I'm resilient and capable, Sarah shared as she fitted a slip of paper into her jar. I wrote that I'm passionate and determined, Emily added, a smile breaking through her earlier apprehension. Margaret beamed at her daughters. This was the magic of vulnerability. What once felt daunting transformed into collective empowerment, a network of shared dreams connecting them in solidarity. In this exchange, Margaret felt her own confidence solidifying. Her fears of inadequacy began to dissipate as she witnessed her daughters shine in their authenticity. With each affirmation they crafted, she understood they were building not just dreams, but a bridge toward reconnection. Can we hold on to these dreams together? Margaret asked, her voice soft yet insistent. Yes, Sarah and Emily replied in unison, their energy vibrating with newfound vigor. Margaret considered the irony of where they had started, a place filled with silence and skepticism. Now they were burgeoning, a spectrum of light breaking through the clouds that once cast shadows on their relationship. With the session drawing to a close, Margaret felt invigorated. She had not only guided her daughters toward expressing their aspirations, but also moved past her reservations about her worth. Her identity was no longer defined by age or circumstances, but enriched by the connection she had fostered. As they wrapped up, Margaret found herself filled with unshakable confidence. The workshop had served its purpose beyond the physicalities. she had accomplished the emotional revival they desperately needed. "From now on, we're not just family. We're partners in this ongoing journey," she affirmed. In that moment, roots of growth intertwined through them, grounding their relationship in resilience, beauty, and mutual accountability. Margaret walked toward the future, steady and fulfilled, proud of the transformation they had navigated collectively. Reality struck her. This was only the beginning. The fears that once threatened to pull them apart had metamorphosed into dreams that bound them tighter. With unwavering resolve, she vowed to continue nurturing this new alliance with intention. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. You need to show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share your own growth experiences with us. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand how vital it is to rally around these transformative journeys.